Welcome, welcome, rockers and music lovers. This episode of Straight Talk, I would like to delve into the subject of chasing guitar god tone. Have you ever fallen into that trap where you are so enamored with another person's playing that you find yourself watching endless demo videos of the kinds of guitars that they used and the kind of amplifiers that they use and the strings and how they set their pickup heights and etc., etc.? I think a lot of us have been there at some point or another in our playing career. And look, it's no secret that the music industry, the music instrument industry, has a vested interest in us believing that if we could only buy this magical pedal or this magical guitar or this magical combination of gear, that somehow we will achieve the guitar tone of our favorite guitar player. This road many of us have been down before is fraught with frustration and futility. Could it be that we are losing more than just our time and our money in doing this? These days, it seems like the market is flooded with outrageously overpriced signature guitars, signature amplifiers, signature speakers, signature pickups, even signature strings, picks, and even slide bars. But will this really make you play like the person that they're named after? I'm going to put this one disclaimer here. If you are part of a tribute band who is trying to perfect the performance of a certain guitar player, if you're in an Eric Clapton tribute, or if you're in a Stevie Ray Vaughan tribute, or if you're in a Queen tribute, whatever, then it would be in your best interest to get as much gear for the look and for the sound as this player. But aside from that, I'm talking about us mere mortals out here that are just trying to learn to play our instrument and be the best player that we can be. What are the options open to us? Hey friends, do yourself a favor, hit that subscribe button below. Let's keep in contact. There are so many subjects that we need to talk about. And by the way, let me know what subject you'd like me to cover in the comments. So let's look at some of these players that we like to worship. Many of these people, let's take Eddie Van Halen, for instance. On his first album, he played, well, what we love to call the Frankenstrat, which is like kind of a, it seems, I don't know if it was even a Fender, but it was a Stratocaster style guitar that he had butchered up and painted himself and put what seemed to be random pickups in there. And he got this incredible sound. Yes, he was using the Marshall Variac and whatnot. And there's all of these mysteries around that brown sound. And there are plenty of gear out there that will guarantee that we can get this brown sound if only we spend this money. Another person, Brian May. Well, Brian May made, with his father's help, made the guitar that he played throughout most of his career in Queen. Now, does that mean that guitar was an expensive guitar? It was probably not that expensive, and most people around Brian who had tried that guitar found it unplayable to them. But to him, it was just his guitar. And he did what he had to do with the tools that he had. Even Jimi Hendrix, Jimi Hendrix has a plethora of signature pedals out there. His estate has wasted no time in capitalizing on his image and on his legend. But the reality is that Jimi Hendrix would play parts casters very often. He would destroy his guitars on stage, or the guitars would just wear out through constant use and or abuse, and he would often have mixed and matched bodies, necks, and pickups configurations depending on what his guitar tech would put together for him at the time. Not only that, we tend to get focused on, take Stevie Ray Vaughan, for instance. He's a great example of having his signature guitar, that number one guitar, you know, his famous number one, the one with the SRV on the pickup that's all beaten up and worn out. Well, he still played many different kinds of guitars. There are shots of him playing hollow bodies and playing many different kinds of strats. Yes, 99.9% of the time it was the strats that he was playing, but not always that number one. But he still sounded like Stevie, no matter what guitar he was playing. Hey friends, Are you finding value in this content? If so, do yourself a favor, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and let's stay in contact. It is only through our ongoing discourse that we will get our best development as artists and musicians. So I want to talk for a second about G.A.S, Gear Acquisition Syndrome. It's something that is very easy to do because you get immediate feedback from it. You get your immediate dopamine rush when you're online and you're in the music store and you pick that pedal and you put that down and you're waiting for the delivery, or you're on your way home and you're thinking how great this is going to be. You watched all the videos, you watched all of the reviews and the tutorials, and you think, yes, this is the piece that I've been missing, only to get home to find that it doesn't sound anything like it did in the reviews, and it doesn't work with your rig that you have at home. Well, let's talk about that for a second. There are so many variables that can go into a person's tone. The type of guitar they're using, the gauge of strings that they're using, the pickups that they're using, the picks that they're using, the amplifier that it's going into, the kind of speaker cab. You have closed back cabs, you have open back cabs, you have combos, you have stacks, you have all kinds of different things. Then you have the speaker that is in that enclosure that will change the sound. And then there's the room that you're in, and there's the microphone that you put in front of it, because we're listening to, probably if you're listening to a Guitar Hero, a pretty old recording of a performance that person did 30, 40, 50 years ago. So is it really viable to think that you're going to buy this pedal that one of these companies spent years researching and tweaking with the actual artist to get that sound that they want? But you know what? That artist was using their own rig, and for their own needs, they specified all of the parts and components that would go into this. So when they use that with their rig, it sounds like they expect. But when you go buy that piece of gear and you bring that home and you insert that into your own audio chain, there's a very high likelihood that you are going to be disappointed. Now, I think what happens is that we're disappointed because we have unreasonable expectations of this new gear, this new purchase. The gear acquisition syndrome is a dopamine cycle of purchases and purchases. And then, of course, after the high, you get the crash because you never really get what you think you're going to get. Hey, friends, do yourself a favor, hit that subscribe button below. Let's keep in contact. There are so many subjects that we need to talk about. And by the way, let me know what subject you'd like me to cover in the comments. I love this meme of this guy riding a bicycle and putting a stick in his own spokes and falling down and hurting himself, because it is it's a perfect metaphor for what we do with gear. We really want to be better players, but instead of practicing, we buy more gear. Now, is that gear going to make us a better player? I can say with pretty high confidence that if Jimi Hendrix were to walk in, if this was possible, if Jimi Hendrix were to walk into your bedroom where you practice, or your basement, or your studio, and pick up your Fender Squier Classic Vibe and plug it into your Boss Katana amp, he'd still sound like Jimi Hendrix. I guarantee you that if Eddie Van Halen were to pick up your Les Paul or your SG plugged into your, I don't know, Marshall G transistor amp and started cranking it out, he would still sound like Eddie Van Halen. The reality is that these people are incredible players who lived with their instruments. Eric Johnson is an incredible player because he put in the practice time. Now, there's also these incredible stories of him that say that he could tell the difference between what battery was in his pedal. So, he would only use Duracell batteries, that's it, or I don't remember exactly, but his techs decided one day they were going to play a trick on him, and they changed all the batteries in his pedals to Eveready batteries. Maybe it was the other way around, non-alkaline batteries. Could have been, I don't remember. And didn't Eric come in the studio, crank up his guitar, and ask right away who changed the batteries in my pedals? Now that's, Eddie Van Halen said that he could hear the difference between a 3-foot guitar cable and a 6-foot guitar cable because of the inductance, the impedance of the actual wire. Well, I don't know, I am not capable of doing that sort of feat, but I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt that the reason that Eddie Van Halen is a great guitar player is because of the time he spent practicing. And Eric Johnson is an amazing guitar player because of the time that he spent perfecting his technique and his vocabulary. I will wager to say that we need much more practice and less gear. Unless, of course, your gear is faulty. When I started playing back in the 70s, we were getting a lot of cheap stuff from Japan. Japan had not quite gotten their legs yet. We were, getting used stuff that was made in the early 70s. Something happened in the mid to late 70s in Japan where they really perfected their techniques. But we would get basically unplayable guitars. So if you have an unplayable guitar for a very cheap amount of money, well, of course, that will impede your progress. If you have a decent playing guitar, as in today we are in the golden age of inexpensive guitars that are made by hugely roboticized production lines, even things that come out of China, which used to be jokes years ago, are now very, very viable guitars for a very reasonable price. Now, unless your gear is faulty, I will wager with 100% certainty that you will need more practice and less gear. Now, I'm not saying you. I'm saying the hypothetical you who wants to become a better player. Now, just like that guy with the stick and the spokes, are you going to practice or are you going to buy more gear? Well, I can say with all certainty that although there's a very big chance that your next purchase will not bring you to that tonal nirvana that you are seeking, especially if you are trying to copy somebody else's style and somebody else's playing. But I will say with 100% certainty that you will never regret becoming a better player. So that has been this episode of Double D's Rock School in the Straight Talk series. I really enjoy talking about playing music, how to practice, how to focus, and how to keep our goals in mind and not to be distracted by what is going on out there. It seems like there are so many variables and so many people vying for our attention and playing on our insecurities that it's really important that we look out for each other and that we tell each other the truth. And the truth is that we are stronger together. Let's be honest with each other. Let's be open. Speaking of which, let me know what you think in the comments below. My name is Dwayne Dixon, aka Double D, and I will be back to see you next week.